Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Crowley.
And I'm Mike Smith.
And this is The Murder Project. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of The Murder Project. We are glad to be back with you guys recording another episode. If you have been listening to the episode for a little bit, you've noticed that there are a few changes, and we will get to those as the episode continues. First, I want to point out that we are covering in episode 47 the Holly Bobo case, and this will be the debrief for that episode. If you're new to the podcast, the Debrief is an episode where I sit down with my good friend and former police officer, Mike Smith, to discuss cases further. In the Debrief, we discuss cases from both sides of the aisle, theories that we might have, and anything we think needs a second look. The Debrief is an unscripted and off-the-cuff commentary about the cases that we are currently covering. The hope of the Debrief is to break the cases down further, but in a relaxed environment with the true crime that we love, but also some laughter. So, let's get the episode started. My man, Mike Smith, in the house.
Indeed I am.
How's it going, man?
It's going pretty well. I am still dealing with allergies, as are most people, so I know I sound a little nasally.
Still got that going on, huh? It's a reoccurring thing on the show.
It's starting to be, yeah. It's been really windy, so I just get blasted all day long.
Yeah, it's like we're like 6-8 weeks running now. But, you know, maybe you'll work it out at some point.
That does sound very accusatory.
So, all right, if you guys noticed in the intro and kind of the way that the podcast has been structured, we are making a few changes. We hope they're for the better. We'd like everybody's feedback as far as all of these things go, because as the podcast progresses and we kind of get a little more invested into it and we have more listeners coming to the show, we would like to bring a little better quality of show and also, you know, get some new equipment every now and then.
And we did, in fact, just invest a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, we got this pretty sweet soundboard.
Yep, we got a new mixer board and soundboard kind of combo. It's got a bunch of different things. I will point out in that last episode, if you listen to it, I hit a little bit of a drum beat in the beginning of it.
Yeah.
Actually, I wasn't supposed to hit the drum beat, but, you know, I just went with it. That's why I was kind of like, okay. Well, continuing on, but, you know, it's new.
It totally worked.
Yeah.
Even when I listened, I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of nice. Because before I heard it on that episode, I hadn't seen, we hadn't used it at all.
No,
it was nice to break into it. And we're definitely doing that today.
Yeah.
And it sounds awesome. Plus all like the voice changing and stuff. We were having fun with that before the episode. Pretty sick.
Yeah. We're like half an hour, 45 minutes late recording into the episode because we're basically just sitting here
messing with our voices,
doing just fun stuff, kind of.
Yeah, it is really fun, and lots of potential here for really changing up like the pacing and the type of the things that we can say, adding the sounds. Man, I'm just so excited.
Just doing a lot of different things and having the opportunity to do those things. And as we kind of get a little more familiarized with the equipment that we got, we're going to get microphones next and kind of update some stuff as we go along and just see if we can kind of keep this thing rolling and bring the quality of the show up.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to that. I think it's going to be awesome. And we want to continue to keep making episodes, bringing you guys good content and a good show, and hopefully be around for years to come.
Oh man, that is the dream. So yeah, definitely. If y'all think it's cool, give us feedback. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. Just tell us what you think, because I want to know.
And that's a good segue for me to enter into a part of the show that I normally say for the end, but I feel like maybe it's the part where most people are cutting out because they know it's at the end of the show. But most of our listeners are on Apple and Spotify, and we have a lot of listeners in other areas. But to kind of break into the podcast game and having to deal with algorithms and things like that, one of the things that I can't stress enough is that if you have an Apple iPhone or an Apple product, that you can go on to and give us a review and, hit 5 stars, leave us a review if you so choose. But we really need that because our podcast is growing in numbers. But one of the things that goes with the algorithm and how they kind of gauge the growth of the podcast and how they're going to basically make it available to more people is based on your reviews, your 5-star reviews, and the comment. Did somebody leave a comment about the show? So if you have an Apple product, please go on there and subscribe to the show, hit the 5 stars, leave us a review. If you're listening on Spotify or a couple of other different platforms, go on there and hit the subscribe button, because one of the things I noticed when I was looking at the data the other day is that probably 60% of the people that listen to the show are not subscribed to the show and haven't, and it's even less than that. Like maybe 2% have left a review or hit the button. So we need stuff like that, stuff that doesn't cost money, to help kind of propel us into that direction.
Yeah, no, I would love that. Yeah, I would love to see a bunch of reviews, and it only take a second of your time.
Yeah, so just click your phone back on while you're listening right now. Just click it back on.
Do it.
Scroll down just a little bit. Click the star. Hit write a review. You don't even have to leave your real name. You can just put in there a title. And you don't even have to put in a title. You can put whatever you want in there. Hit submit. Done.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. The more creative the name, the better.
Yeah. I had someone recently that reached out to us. It's been a couple months ago, but they're like, hey, you should read the reviews from the people on the show. And I was like, oh, well, I haven't got one in like 4 months.
but we would totally be interested in doing that. If we got a good review, we would read it out, so having an alias or a screen name, then you and only you would know that you did that, and we'd be reading it live for the podcast. And that's really exciting to me.
Yeah. I read off all the reviews that we've had so far, so keep them coming. I'll keep reading them. You'll get a shout out on the show. And not only that, but thank you to everybody that has gone on to Facebook and Instagram and liked the show and is following the show. It's a good deal. We look forward to growing those pages and putting more content on them. And that's the whole reason why we're here. So
yeah. Trying to reach as many people as possible. And we're looking forward to as many people as possible reaching back.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our spill for this episode. I apologize that we had to burn up a few minutes there, but if I don't get that information out, I'm really excited about the progression of the show and the way that it's going. So I want to let you guys know that that's kind of where we're at as far as the show goes, and getting our podcast out to more people. That is how you guys can help us, and it costs you absolutely nothing. So here we go. Holly Bobo.
Yes. Oh, man, this is a kind of confusing, and it really leaves you wondering just exactly what happened, because you never, ever get the whole story.
Yeah, it feels like there's nothing straight, like there's no straight answers anywhere.
No, it's a bunch of untrustworthy people who are all trying to finger point at each other a little bit, telling different stories, locations, and things that might have transpired are all different seemingly to every source. And some other things that I found pretty shady.
Yeah. There's a lot there. I feel like there's a lot of shady things that are happening in this. And that's one of the things I kind of wanted to start out the podcast with, was in the last episode, the reason it gets confusing, and I didn't want to get to a spot where people were kind of like, what is going on? Like, what are we doing here? Because you have Holly Bobo, her brother Clint, her mother Karen, her boyfriend Drew Scott. You've got Dylan Adams and Zach Adams, who are brothers that are suspects, Jason Autry, Shane Austin, Jeff and Mark Percy, and then Sandra King, who is in with Jeff and Mark. So the names, the times, everything is confusing because no one is giving even a close to similar account of what's happening during all of this.
Yeah, they're all different.
Everything is different and everything is messed up. And then when we're talking about the disappearance, up to the original questioning, up to when the body or supposed body is found, and I'll get into that here in just a second, the timeline, depending on what you look at, what information you look at, what source you're reading. The timelines can be slightly different. The information can be slightly different. I read one article that kind of points that they feel like the brother is very suspicious in this case, and we'll kind of dive into that here in a little bit. But depending on where you go, I was like, wow, there's a lot of information in here. Some of it had to be redacted. Some of it, I mean, it's crazy. So just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that were happening in this case specifically. Now, normally I don't like to read directly from Wikipedia. I do like to use their page to get dates and names.
Yeah, it is a good resource for that.
Because you can print that off and look and go, okay, these are the dates, these are the names, whatever. But so that I don't get the sources or information confused, I'm just going to read one thing from the Wikipedia page that kind of ties all this together.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the information we have in this case that kind of makes it sound like there's a little discrepancies as far as story goes and what evidence is given and I'm reading this from the page. The criminal case against the men charged has been met with strong criticism and conflict between members of the prosecution, complicating the investigation. District Attorney Matt Stowe was elected to office in the summer of 2014 following the arrest and stated that he believes he was elected in part due to the skepticism regarding the arrests and questions over whether enough evidence exists against them to obtain a conviction. And what we're talking about here is, in the first episode, I referenced that some of this investigation and charging was going on before the body was even found. And a lot of people were saying, where's the evidence? Why is there no evidence in this case?
Mm-hmm.
So he believed that the voters wanted another set of eyes on the Holly Bobo case and that they were not happy with everything that was coming out of the DA's office, basically. And I think they wanted someone to take another look, or someone else to be like, say, like, hey, what's going on? So additionally, in the fall of 2014, Jason Autry's attorney, John Heberson, accused the prosecutor of arresting the defendants without probable cause as an unethical investigatory technique, then adding and dropping charges strategically before hearings to avoid having to produce evidence against the defendants. In October 2014, when evidence tampering charges were dropped against Dylan Adams just days after he was charged with rape, if those reports are correct, it means that they were just playing games. They charged him with something less serious in order to keep him locked up. And when it comes time to answer questions about the charges, they dismiss that and charge him with a more serious charge in the circuit court where he is not entitled to a preliminary investigation. And kind of some of the things that he's talking about as far as this goes that we can touch on is normally whenever you charge someone with supposed crime,
right,
you have a arresting officer. Let's say it's an on-view charge. You have an arresting officer and he says, okay, I caught this person doing this, committing this crime, and this is the penal code that addresses that offense.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to take that person to the jail. He's going to fill out what we call a P3 that gives all your information, gives your charge, and then it also gives you a place to write your narrative where you lay out your probable cause for said charge.
Right.
Now, when that charge goes through, it usually, that is your kind of your paperwork you fill out to get that person into the jail. After that, their officer is going to go and he's going to write a detailed report. He or she is going to write a detailed report about the probable cause leading to that arrest. That is then going to go to a detective who's going to look at it, check everything out, make sure it's good. If there's further investigating that needs to be done, they're going to go ahead and do it.
Yep.
If not, they're going to go present it to the DA's office. The DA's office is going to look at it. They're going to see if there's enough charge or there's enough probable cause for the charge. And then after that, you have to issue an indictment.
That's right.
And I know in the state of Texas, if my memory serves me correct, you have to have an indictment against someone reached within 180 days of the initial charge.
I believe that's correct.
So basically what he's saying in all of this is that these guys are being arrested for one charge, and before they get to the indictment stage or anything like that, they will drop a charge so that they don't have to produce the evidence for it, and then they will recharge them with something else, basically starting the clock over, or in some cases bypassing all of that altogether. So it's kind of a weird, that statement in general, that accusation in general. I mean, that's pretty heavy.
It is pretty heavy, and you can kind of see that from their point of view. And like most cases in true crime, we don't have all the details. We just have what's available to us. But that is a good way to keep somebody locked up, putting pressure on them.
Yep.
So as a possibly shady investigative technique, keeping them off the street and giving you more time to dig, it almost makes sense, except that it's not a very good practice because it gets you a lot of heat.
Yeah. And more specifically in this, when they're talking about Dylan Adams, remember, he was the one that originally was giving them information supposedly about this crime, and
Right.
that they were going to use him as someone who was going to be a witness. But then they said, well, he's not actually credible. Let's move on. And so this is what he's kind of talking about. And he further goes on to say that he states that similar treatments of Mark Percy were also done to avoid hearings. In August of 2014, the state failed to arrange transport for Percy to the courthouse, causing the hearing to be rescheduled for September. But just prior to the new hearing, the charges against him were dropped, with the explanation given that Percy was facing unrelated federal charges and that they were being forced to wait to proceed with the state charges. Herbison said the law regarding the charges would not preclude the state's charges. If the state is claiming this is the case, the prosecutor is either ill-informed or he's being disingenuous. The charges were never reinstated against his brother Jeff or Mark. So after all of this was said and done, that's when I kind of referenced in the first episode that the charges were never brought against, or the charges were dropped against both Mark and Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
And he is also correct in saying that a state charge, because the jail that I worked at, we housed federal inmates
Right.
at this jail. And so if we had someone that came in on a state charge and then they were later indicted on, let's say, a federal charge, we would release them from quote unquote state or county custody.
Right.
Then we would book them in under federal custody. The charges they had would be left pending or held.
Right.
And after their federal court case was completed, then you could go back and you can charge them with the state crime if you so choose. If you had someone that, say, had a federal indictment and they got life in prison, is it necessary to go back and charge someone with a crime if it's just, say,
I would think probably not.
yeah, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle or something?
Yeah.
Probably not. But in this situation, we don't know what the federal charge was, and then it doesn't matter because they didn't hold the charges against him. They dismissed them.
Right.
That's two separate things.
Yes.
We're talking about two totally different things here. It's no different than if you are arrested in one county, and then once you get to that county, you have a warrant out for your arrest in another county.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that the county that originally had the warrant against you supersedes anything that happens to you, and now we can't charge you with a crime? No, it doesn't. All of this can continue. Both processes can continue at the same time, and the person can be held liable for two different actions in two different jurisdictions. Doesn't matter. So that's just one of those things where it starts getting kind of shady to me, and then it gets worse because...
But wait, there's more.
There's more. Zach Adams' attorney, Jennifer Thompson, said that evidence was not turned over to the defense. For example, in 2014, DA Matt Stowe made a statement that Holly was menstruating at the time of her abduction, and there was a lot of DNA evidence at Zachary Adams' Decatur County home. No DNA evidence was ever turned over to the defense or produced at trial. She also said the medical examiner referred to materials that were never given to her. And that's a huge deal because you have a DA's office, a district attorney himself saying that we have blood evidence at this guy's house.
That's super serious.
And then never uses it.
Yeah, it
doesn't turn it over, doesn't use it.
That frustrates me right now.
Yeah, just straight out of the gate.
Does it exist then?
Exactly.
Very shady.
Yeah, we don't know if it exists. And then you have the medical examiner referencing materials and other, I guess, evidence as they're talking about here. But she's sitting there saying like, hey, no one ever gave me the evidence that he's talking about. This is what we like to call discovery.
That's right.
in a trial.
Yeah,
when
I
you
think
have
it's
discovery.
a pretty essential phase of a trial as well.
Yeah. So on December 17th, 2014, 9 months after Zach Adams was arrested, Judge Creed McGinley chastised the prosecutors for delaying the case and for the state's failure to turn over evidence to the defense. He said, quote, "I'm absolutely out of patience with these cases not moving." And he further ordered that a bill of particulars be filed for Zachary Adams' case within 7 days and that discovery take place immediately. That's what we were talking about a second ago. Discovery. You have to give them the evidence that you have so that they can mount a defense against it if they need to.
Right. Yeah, that's literally part of your rights in a trial.
And so the prosecution ignores both the deadlines, and in response, the attorneys for both several of the men filed motions to dismiss the charges. The motions filed accused the states of silencing or stonewalling, stating that, among other things, the state had yet to disclose evidence that, this is a big one, they did not disclose evidence that the skull found belonged to Bobo. "It would appear to me," she said, "it would appear to me that they had a skull with dental match, that they would have given that to us right away. It's a little suspicious why we don't have that forensic information." And I'm not sure if what she's saying is pre-trial or post, but if that is the case, then we're talking about her not getting that there was evidence that they found Holly Bobo's skull, but the forensic matching they used was never given to him. So how do you say that for a fact that was Holly Bobo's skull?
Yeah, you can. It's just an accusation.
Yeah.
Maybe not accusation is not the right word. It's just a statement. You're not proving it.
Yeah.
And criminal trials are all about proving things.
Beyond reasonable doubt, I think, is the
You know what?
is the term they use.
Exactly right. And saying that you had a skull with a bullet hole that matched a firearm that was also possessed by one of the suspects, but not providing it so we can be sure that exists, makes it super shady.
It's a little weird. I would agree with that. And that's kind of the reason I wanted to start off with that. And I apologize if it was a little slow rolling, was because it's just strange to me how the DA's office, and then I didn't read any further, but then you have accusations from the DA's office saying that the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations was kind of stonewalling them and slow rolling their investigation and not cooperating and tampering with evidence or something. There was all kinds of these wild accusations.
When it gets to a point like this, it really makes me wonder, and this happens in true crime all the time. Did you find out later on that evidence went missing? It was disposed of, and they have no explanation for it. And they're just like, yeah, we have that evidence. And some guy just leans over and just gives them a look like, no, we don't.
We don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Dylan Fletcher, the night shift property guy, he just incinerated all of it because it was his last day.
Yeah. Accident.
Yeah.
The work order got messed up, and now everything's kind of wonky.
Yeah. He was looking for the Boba case. He found the Bobo case and just threw it in the incinerator. And let's hurry up and get a conviction so we don't have to provide that stuff anymore. And he's like, we need that for the conviction. And he's like, ooh, this is going to be bad.
Yeah. All of these things kind of go up where I'm not trying to trash the district attorneys in general. I'm just talking specifically about this case. It seems just a little strange to me that there's a lot of missing evidence or a lot of things that were excluded in discovery that they weren't given. And then there's a whole lot more. So let's kind of dive into some of this as the case goes. And something I want to add to this podcast that I don't think I really touched on enough in the first one is that originally when Holly gets up in the morning and she's studying for her exam, it's 4:30 in the morning. She's kind of moving around the house. And I marked out a lot about the 7:30 time frame, saying that everybody was kind of getting up, going to work, doing these things, phone calls, things like that. Well, when her mother and her father got up for work and they were leaving, it was around 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
That would give Holly's mother, Karen, enough time to get to work and for all of this to kind of transpire. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I was making a lot of references around the 7:30 mark, so I didn't want people to think.
Well, around this time is actually something that I find the most suspicious about what happened, kind of the start of all this. So we know, or it's that Holly had things to do that day. So she was getting ready to start her day, and she had a destination she was going to go to. Then somebody confronts her in the garage, a guy dressed in camo and a hat or long hair, or both.
Both.
And at this time, the brother Clint, he hears something happening in the garage, a scream, I believe. And he looks out there and sees Holly in distress, and she's on the ground at this point, like on her knees. I think he described it as.
Yeah, so he originally says he was woken up by the dogs barking, and then when he looked over there, yeah, he could hear that there was a kind of a one-sided argument going on, and that there might have been some screams and some things that just normal things that should have.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that makes me want to talk about this, is because he sure acted like it was normal. Now, I'm not saying he's involved in any way, but he hears this going on, and he sees somebody out there wearing camo and has long hair and a hat, and he immediately thinks that it's Drew. Okay, even if it was Drew, she's obviously, they're having some type of an issue here, and he never even bothers to go take a look. And to me, that sounds really weird. I'm like, what? Sounds like there's a problem. He didn't even go out there and like pop his head out the door and go, hey, what's going on? Or y'all good? Or even just not say anything. Just take a look and be like, this is weird.
Yeah, something suspicious is going on out here. Or like you mentioned, even if it is the boyfriend, he believes it's the boyfriend, and there is some sort of altercation going on out there, you wouldn't just go check?
Is that somehow normal? Maybe it is. Okay.
I would have gone and checked.
I know that I would have. And later on, we find out that there's blood in the garage.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that she was struck. It's Holly's blood.
Yeah.
So something hit her. And I mean, it just, to hear it like that, and you're like, oh, something was definitely going on. And he was just like, oh, I see somebody out there. I think it's Drew. Then it's cool.
Yeah. Even if you don't know the scenario, and I know I say, oh, I would do that. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that Clint is inclined to do that. We're just kind of stating, yeah, that's something we would do. But in the instance of there being blood out there, could they have known in the beginning that it was Holly's blood? No, but they did later on find out it was. But it's blood in general. Something happened out there.
So we know from what we've heard in the case that Drew was miles away hunting. Did Clint know that?
That's a good question. Everybody else in the family seemed to have.
See, that's what I'm saying. To me, that's another thing that kind of made me like a light bulb go off. And I'm like, wait, everybody else knew Drew wouldn't be present. Did Clint not know that? Because they all live together. I feel like that's something they would have heard in passing.
But you could also say that the reason that Holly knew is because obviously that's her boyfriend. The reason that Karen knew is because in the morning, Drew double checked with her to make sure she knew he was out there, because there were some passerbys that had been questioning about if he had permission to be there. So is there a chance that Clint didn't know that Drew was out there? Sure, I guess there's a chance, but also you would feel like,
I'm not saying he should have known. I'm just saying I feel like that's something that he might have even heard in passing, because they all share a dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hear people talking in the other room, and you might not be listening actively, but you still hear things.
Sure.
And so that's just a couple of things that really caught me off guard. And then he later sees her and this camoed figure heading off into the woodline.
Right.
Clint is the one who says he saw that. And he also knew, more than likely, at least I would wager, that Holly had things to do. And now she's just heading off into the woodline with possibly Drew. He didn't find that weird?
And then at some point, while he's having these phone conversations with his mom, who's also having phone conversations with a neighbor, that, okay, there is a possibility that this isn't Drew, that something is going on here. So when his mom makes the statement, get a gun and shoot him, this is after she already knows, because she got the call from the neighbor that there was something happening in the garage, in the carport area. And then she has already had a conversation with Clint, and he said that Holly is having a altercation with who he believes is Drew. She's trying to tell him, no, it's not Drew. She knows that it's not Drew. Grab a gun, shoot him. And Clint is still somehow confused about who this person actually is. But at some point, he makes the connection and says, okay, I got to go outside. He goes outside, but it's already too late.
Yeah, they're gone.
They're gone. And then after this, you get into a scenario where the cops are coming. Karen has called the cops. Clint has also called the police. They get out there. And what I heard somewhere else, I can't remember exactly where it was, but they had kind of been on the scene for up to 2 hours before they actually said, okay, this is a missing persons case, which that would go against the information I heard previous to that, saying that when they started looking for her, they started pinging her cell phone, that made it sound like it was like
Right out the gate.
straight out the gate, we're going for it. Then I hear information that it's up to 2 hours before they consider her a missing person and start investigating, even with the evidence that Holly has been with this strange man in the carport. There's blood in the carport. Holly is now missing. It would make sense to me that it was more of a jump active investigation, not more of a delayed investigation. But boy, that would be terrible if it was a delayed investigation. And then by that point, 2 hours later, what happened to her has probably already happened to her.
Yes. I just realized I was calling it a garage.
Yeah, it's referred to as a garage and a carport. So,
Yeah.
You guys get it.
Well, to me, I'd like to know for sure because a carport means it's just like a roof.
It is. I saw a picture of the area. It's a carport.
It is a carport, okay,
Yeah.
because that means that there was more of a chance of these people being seen, and they were because the neighbor saw it. So later on, it's reported that one of the several suspects drives a white pickup.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't pull up at the front of the house
No.
because Holly is led away.
Yeah, she's with the story that we all get in the beginning is she is led away either. I mean, it doesn't appear to be forcefully, but with coercion, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that definitely makes me wonder if there was a weapon present or not, because she went with him and it isn't seen done forcefully, like you said. She just goes with.
And then you have the white pickup that comes in, but then you also have Holly's cell phone pinging, leaving in a direction north of the house. And so my question would be, okay, is there a way to determine if she was on foot or if she was in said pickup truck?
Right.
Because the ping's probably only going to come in once every 5 minutes.
And how far away was the pickup?
Yeah.
Because
how much distance was traveled between each ping?
Yeah, because I look at it like this. If this person went there to get her, if she fought, was he just going to carry her?
Yeah. How did he know that she was willingly going to go with him? Not, or with coercion.
Right, yeah, like that she was going to hoof it.
Yeah, out of duress.
Right. But I mean, another one of the things that's right on top of the deck of that is really bizarre, because if you were there to kidnap her, to take her away, wouldn't you want your vehicle close?
You would think so.
Did she know this person? And that's how he got so close already, and then was like, hey, also, I'm actually going to take you. Now come with me or I'll kill you.
Yeah, get in this truck. Let's go.
Yeah, but the truck ain't nowhere near. He's like, come with me. Like, we have to go out, head out that way. And he points and she just goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. This isn't victim blaming. I'm just wondering how this all came to pass, because once you hear it a couple times, that's when all these questions kick in.
Yep.
He didn't carry her away. She walked away.
Yep.
So you can assume that he had a weapon. There's blood in the carport. She was struck, maybe stabbed. We don't know.
Yeah. What was the interaction that happened that convinced her to not put up a fight and go with this person?
She didn't run and scream. To me, that yells, she knew that person.
Yeah.
Because he was able to get close. Camouflage works well. Not that well.
No.
He's not like the Predator.
Or he could have been hiding in the garage, but still, either way, that goes to the point of, he's like, hey, you're going to come with me. And she's like, okay, I have to, because he's got this gun pointed at my stomach, or whatever the scenario is. But she didn't make an effort to run to, say, the neighbor's house or run back inside.
Yell for Clint. Anything like that. It's just.
That is a good point now that you said that. At no point in time did she ever yell
for help
or to Clint. And that could be for one of two reasons. One, to save him in case she thought the person didn't know he was in the house,
mm-hmm.
or she knew the person, like you just said.
Or and this is my last theory, pure speculation, Drew made all those phone calls as an alibi, and it was him.
Yeah.
But, I mean, as if you've listened to the first episode, you know that doesn't really get brought up much. But I'm like, she didn't yell for help. He looked close enough like Drew that even Clint saw him and thought it was him. She didn't scream and run away like it was a stranger endangering her. And she walked away with this person. However, it may be under duress or otherwise, she went with him.
Mm-hmm.
So just the start of this case, just the very start of it gives me the most pause. And there's plenty of reason for pause later on, which we already talked about.
And also I heard in another spot that she had a previous boyfriend who had been abusive. I don't know if that's physically or verbally, but she had to get a restraining order against him, and that this person could have also been a suspect in there, even though we don't hear about him because everybody's focusing on the other guys that are kind of labeled as the murderers or kidnappers.
We don't even know this dude's name.
No, I don't.
Why is he not at the top of the list?
I never found his name anywhere that should have been. Yeah, should have been suspect number one.
Yes, because they already have a history of violence.
I'd have been like, okay, who was at the house? The brother Clint.
Mm-hmm.
And I did also hear that Clint was interrogated for hours on end. I heard up to 17 hours that they strip searched him and that they collected all of his electronic devices to clear him as a suspect.
I mean, I hate that probably was very uncomfortable and for him, but just with the things I've already said, I would say that was probably necessary.
And also so this is where I go, okay, who was at the house? Clint was. Okay, the neighbor's the one that phoned the mom. The mom and dad are gone. Who's the next person we'd go to? The
Clint?
boyfriend.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Drew, yeah.
Yeah. Then from the boyfriend, I would say, okay, is there anybody that you know of that would want to hurt Holly? Oh, there's some guy we don't know.
Yeah, insert guy's name here.
That has a restraining order on him from Holly. Maybe we go there next. Maybe all of these things happen. But with the information that's coming from the DA's office and then coming out after this case has kind of been concluded, I wouldn't know what to say they did. I honestly don't.
I don't know either, because the investigation, of course, leads us to a half dozen people. But even when you start looking at all of that, it doesn't make sense. And I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but even the suspect that they believe the most and eventually goes to prison for it says her body was dumped in a specific location. Was it Kelly Ridge? Is that where he said he did it?
Yeah.
But
it wasn't even found there.
But it wasn't found there, and it was found in what's referred to as a bucket.
Yeah, or next to a bucket. I don't know why they point the bucket out and then they say overturned bucket.
Right. So like something was carrying
Contents?
Remains.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and they didn't find all of them, which makes a lot of sense because it's out in the woods in a place that has a lot of, predatory creatures. But
then you get to the point where they say like there was no evidence given forensically to prove that those remains were Holly's.
Right.
If that's true, that's huge.
That's huge. And this case shouldn't even have been able to go on, because you don't generally see multiple being arrested and multiple people being convicted without a body.
Well, and as far as I'm concerned, as far as the evidence goes, I don't see anywhere that they used DNA evidence or otherwise to convict anybody of anything. They used a he said scenario.
Yeah, confessions. Multiple bad ones from the sound of it, but just enough to get people to finally crack and be like, yeah, okay, I did it.
Yeah, so let's go into a little bit of that. So it starts out with Dylan Adams.
Mm-hmm.
He's supposedly in jail on unrelated weapons charges is what I read, but I guess that could be anybody's guess at this point. And that I've heard that he went to them to give this information. And then I've also heard that the police, went to him and said, hey, got you in here on this weapons charge. You're going to go ahead and give us some information about this Holly Bobo deal? And he's like, oh, yeah. Now that I think about it, my brother Zach and his friend Jason I did see Holly over at their house that they shared together. And my brother Zach did say that he raped her. And when I said that in the first one, they used that in quotations, that he raped her, which was a little odd to me.
Why does it have to be in quotations?
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of weird. And geez, he just says like, "Oh yeah, I totally saw her there." And these are people that have no history with Holly.
Not that I could. I mean, I would think in a small town,
Sure.
everybody would know each other, but I never saw a direct link to.
Yeah, I didn't find anything about that she knew any of these people.
And that's why we're saying this case is bonkers.
It is. It is. I know we're jumping all over the place because even as I'm talking right now, my brain is still just all spun up trying to figure out exactly who did what. Because in the end, spoiler alert, they still don't know. Nobody know. People are in prison right now, and they convicted them of it, but the whole story is not present.
Yeah. Not only right now are we trying to get used to new recording equipment, but we're trying to sort this thing out, and it is a mess.
It feels like that sometimes. I'm still having a great time, but my brain's like, what? So a croc wearing, camo clad, baseball cap, in need of a haircut stranger just shows up and walks away with her, and nobody knows nothing.
Yeah.
But the neighbor saw him.
Yeah, or heard him.
I don't know what the landscape looks like here, what the street looks like. Is it like a normal city block?
No.
You said you saw pictures.
Yeah, it's more of like country living, but
spaced out a little bit.
Yeah, but with like plots.
Okay. So, I mean, the neighbors aren't super far away, but they're not super close either.
Right.
And so they hear something, and they're like, yeah, that's weird. And then the brother's like, yeah, I totally saw a dude. I thought it was Drew. And then I saw them leave into the woods. But it's not like Holly had anything important going on. She was studying for an exam and probably had things to do that day. Because, like we discussed, at least what was told, and in the first episode, she has things, she runs errands and stuff, grabs a coffee, does something like that on her way to her destination. None of those things get done. She gets taken away before anything like that happens.
Yeah, and then I'm glad you brought up the Crocs thing again, because you mentioned it earlier, and that's what I wanted to reference back to my part one, where I said they make a comment that, oh, my brother was wearing camo and Crocs. And I pointed out, I'm like, isn't it odd that he said my brother was wearing Crocs? Because they found the Croc footprint out at the scene. And to me, that was just a little odd, because you would have had to get very specific with footwear. You would say like, oh yeah, my brother was wearing, I don't know, shorts, a black t-shirt, and some shoes.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh, he was wearing camo and he was wearing Crocs. Very specific about, one, the clothing description.
Right.
And two, the footwear. Because that directly ties him into what they know as far as what the person was wearing and what shoes they had on. It's
also believed at the time of the incident that he had hair similar to the description given, right?
Right. But then you look back at Zach Adams' stature.
Right.
And they don't match. Doesn't matter if he's too short, he's too tall, he's fat, he's skinny, whatever, he doesn't match. That's why later they go back and say, oh, no. It was Shane Austin. That was the guy who went up to the house.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he's the closest to the description.
Yeah.
Now, compared to Drew, does the person that Clint saw, is there a resemblance at all? The picture I saw of Drew did not look anything like him.
Yeah.
He didn't look like a very big guy in the picture I saw. He looked like average to me.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I wish we could point out, because I didn't really even see a comparison between the two. That if Drew was in fact the guy that was there, did he closely resemble who Clint says that he saw?
Yeah.
And
if you're following along and you're like, wow, there's a lot of holes here, that's because there are.
Well, it's because everything is all over the page. And if I printed out documents, which I do sometimes, and then I try to put some stuff together, it was just a mess.
It is.
It was a huge mess.
It is a mess. Yeah, for real.
And so we don't have to go deep into that part of it, but that's where we get. So we have Dylan, who either goes to the police or they go to him, and he's like, oh yeah, I did see all this. And what I was trying to get to is that when that happens, is that because Dylan is trying to look for a deal, or does that happen because that allows the police now to start to have the ability to start investigating someone or, multiple people?
Right.
Does that get to the point where they're like, okay, we got a confession from this guy saying that he saw his brother's act, this other guy, Jason Autry, and then this other fella, Shane Austin, destroying evidence. Now we got people we can go after. They're also local crackheads, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know specifically if I know that they all had rap sheets. They were all looked down upon. That's why, and they were into meth and drugs.
Well, I did want to address that a little bit just with my personal experience, because if you have never been around or dealt with somebody who is into like that type of meth drug culture, it's hard to explain. These are not people that you can trust anything that comes out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Period. I mean, these are people that you need to doubt if they say that water is wet.
Yeah.
Because they know what they're doing. They know how to talk to people to get what they want, because they often do it all the time in search for the drug that they want. So they know what to say, how to say it. They're very manipulative because all they know is that they want something, and they're going to say whatever they have to achieve that goal, especially when you're looking at prison time.
Yeah.
They will flip on each other so fast, and they'll take any cues you give when you're talking about a case or an incident. Anything that you say with a specific, they're going to latch onto that, and they're going to try to twist it into their own favor. And I know you're only going to have to take me at that word on that, but if you've dealt with them, then you know they are very good manipulators, because they have to do it for a living. And generally, they're also thieves and general scumbags.
Yeah. And I guess I should have said meth head, not crackhead, because we are talking about methamphetamines.
Yeah, right. And they run in the same circles, but that's just something I wanted to say, because as soon as I found out that all these people run around in the meth crowd, I was like, holy smokes, no wonder this case is such a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
Because nothing they ever say is you can take them at their word, because they're going to latch on to any little clue about what's actually going on, and they're going to start naming names and using what very little contextual clues they've picked up to try to spin a story so that it makes sense. And it may have ended up in convictions, whether that's true or not. Not the convictions, but whether the story that got them there is true. May not be. These are people, you just can't trust them. They'll lie right to you. So when I was on the street, and I'm sure when you are too, when you have to address these people, you speak as vague as possible. And they do too. And that's why you ask all the questions. You never tell them what you heard or what you saw. You're telling them, I'm here for you because of this. And if you have anything to tell me, you need to tell me.
Yeah.
You tell me names, and you tell me locations, and not just down the street over there at 3rd and whatever. You tell me addresses. You tell me real names, not street names, because everybody got a street name, and they never line up.
Yeah. So in saying that, that's one of the things I found in kind of reading through this, is that after Dylan supposedly makes this confession and the investigations and the charges start rolling in, then you have Shane. Let me back up. They discredit Dylan and say that his information is no longer valid.
No surprise.
Now they're already rolling with the investigation, and they're still going to use it to arrest people and bring charges against them. But then they move to Shane Austin and say, okay, you're going to need to be our guy. Then they're going to move to Jason and be like, no, you're going to be our guy. And during all of this going back and forth, apparently the discovery that was available to each of these people was said that is how Jason could have gathered enough information to be believable.
Yeah.
Even though he says, yeah, well, did we dump? I wasn't there when they dumped the body, but I know that they dumped it over here. And they're like, nah, actually, they found it over here. And he's like, or whatever. And they're like, yeah, whatever. You at least have some of the details we believe to be true, right?
Well, yeah, because you just gave them to me.
Yeah, because they have been in all of these other reports that he's had access to.
Right.
And so that's where my head starts to hurt, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, what was there in discovery? And then obviously there was enough there to make a story or tell his story, however that goes. Like I'm saying, right now, you have enough there to say, well, they got people that said, okay, the receipt was found from Holly's purse or from whatever down the street from Shane Austin's house. You have all these little tidbits of evidence that kind of point that direction, but they don't necessarily take you there. It's a good story. It sounds pretty good, but it doesn't get you like all the way there.
Right. Yeah. Because as we know, at least they claim that they're driving down the road and just throwing things out the windows.
Mm-hmm.
So
getting rid of evidence. But then if you go back to Dylan's story, he says that Shane was at Jason and Zach's house burning evidence.
Yeah.
Destroying evidence. So what made it, I don't know. You know, it's a weird deal. But moving to Shane, they get a hold of him because Dylan says that he sees Shane at Jason and Zach's house and he's destroying evidence. So that's whenever in the beginning I was talking about they get him on a tampering with evidence charge. Then they drop that and they move to more of a sexual assault charge. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're going to move to kidnapping. Maybe they're going to move. And so they're kind of advancing the charges as they're going.
Right.
But they get to Shane Austin and they're like, okay, we want your story. And he's like, okay, well, I'll work with you guys. Then they say, okay, well, he's not credible as well. Mm-hmm. And what that tells me in the beginning is that Shane and Dylan's stories don't quite match up. There's not enough evidence there to back it. There's no way that they feel like they can get a conviction. They even went to, from what I heard, after all of this took place, they went to Zach's house. They searched the house. They took backhoes out there. They were excavating dirt, trying to see if they could figure out where this body was, which leads me to believe that all of the places that these guys are telling them the body was not true, obviously.
Right.
We're going back in a circle again.
Yep.
And then they come back and they say, okay, Shane, you're not credible either, but we're still going to put you on the chopping block. Like you're not off the hook yet.
Right.
And then all of this goes back and forth with him, and then he kills himself.
And he killed himself in Florida.
Right.
Right. And dude, what was the manner of this suicide? I didn't find anything about it.
What I heard that he hung himself, and I'm not exactly 100% on that. Don't quote me, but
a lot of that going around in this case.
Golly, I know. I feel like I feel very confused about the things that are happening, and the more we are talking about it together, I don't feel any more comfortable about it.
No, I don't either. And that happens in true crime. Sometimes you just get wound up and you start chasing the information, and you still wind up. It's like we said in the Tom Brown case. It's like a question hydra. Just when you think you answered one, two more pop up.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not only chasing my tail, but it's just like your brain's spinning. You have questions. You're searching, but I'm just speaking a lot in generalities. Where I'm just like, well, maybe, or could be, possibly, this guy. I don't know that guy. We haven't done a case like this that I feel is as confusing as far as the story. And the Tom Brown case is definitely one of those cases where it is confusing, but I feel like even in that case, we have a lot more information we can go off of that we can actually nail down and say, well, we're for sure at least these things happened.
Yeah, there also isn't a half dozen suspects in that case.
A half dozen meth heads that are all out to, either cut for themselves or someone else.
That's right. I mean, the first guy to start talking just dimed his brother out like it was nothing.
Yeah. And that's what leads that. I'm not saying that the story was fabricated.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it's awfully suspicious that that's the way that it went with him diming his brothers out. But like you said, meth heads will literally do whatever. They will tell you what you want to hear.
That's
so
exactly right.
Like you were saying, leading questions. Like if I say, do you know anything about the Holly Bobo case? And they're like, why? You guys be able to cut me some time off?
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
I might know something.
We'll see if we can help you.
That's right.
I might know something.
I know her.
Yeah.
I went to school with her.
They're like, okay, what else do you know? He's like, well, maybe I saw my brother and his friend hanging out with them. And they're like, tell us more. And then somehow we get to Shane Austin. This same scenario is taking place, but then he's discredited. Then he commits suicide. And now, in my opinion, you've got a fall guy.
Mm-hmm.
You got someone that can't speak for themselves.
That's right.
Because he's deceased. And then they're going to go to Jason and say, okay, well, how about we cut a deal with you?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yeah, I'll cut a deal with you guys. Now, the story's a little different.
Yes, it is.
It's going to be a little different than what you heard before, but what happened was, and then he goes down this, I listened to the court reporting of it where he's talking about them having a conversation about having to gut her and leave her. Then you have a scenario where she is possibly still alive. So Zach has to shoot her.
Right.
But then that's when he gets freaked out, man.
Somebody might have heard that.
Somebody might have heard that. I got to go. The being out in broad daylight, potentially gutting somebody,
That was fine.
throw them in, that's all fine.
Yeah.
But when that shot rang out, boy, that shook me to my core, and I knew I had to go home.
Yeah. Never mind the fact that I was just going to eviscerate a woman so that she'll sink in the river.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never mind that. Totally natural.
Yeah, that's doable. We can do that. We hunt all the time. We're outdoorsmen. But man, when he pulled that trigger and it echoed through the underpass, I had to run. I had to get out of there. So I jump it. We get load her back in the truck, and we leave. And then they dumped her body after that. And then you're like, what?
You all were in one vehicle. Where did you go?
Yeah,
It drove him home, is what he implies.
yeah. That they took him home, and then they went and dumped her body. And he said,
Back through town.
Yeah.
With a corpse, I'm assuming in the bed of the truck, because I hope they didn't sit her up and seatbelt her in.
yeah, golly, I hope not.
I mean, there's just a great example right there for everybody who's listening and following along, playing the home game. Listen to that story. They get her out there. They drag her out the truck. We're assuming she's in the bed, right? Is it
Wrapped in blankets.
Is it a crew cab? Is it an extended cab? This is something I feel like would really help us figure out where she was this whole time, wrapped in blankets in the back. Even still, they're like, you know what we're going to do? This one time, I saw a body float in the river. It was just held up by the swelling belly from a rotting body in the river. And they're like, you know how to get around that? Just cut her guts out.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay. Super cash. Drag her out. She's still alive. Was she supposed to be dead already? That part of the story is missing.
Yeah.
Was she supposed to be? Did they strangle her? Did they drug her? What happened? And then they're like, oh man, she's still alive. Let me just grab this revolver right quick. Pow. He gets to, oh man, that freaked me out. Take me home real quick. And they're like, load her back up.
Yeah. He's saying that the body was in the back of the truck wrapped in multicolored blankets. And Shane Austin, was disposing evidence into a burn barrel. And that he was only supposed to be there to help dispose of the body.
So if she was still alive, and they shot her, they executed her in this moment, and they loaded her back up, there would be blood everywhere.
Yep.
Multicolored blankets or not.
And where's that evidence?
Right.
Never found. And then you have a story. Okay, well, why was all this taking place? Well, you see, we was going to go out and show Clint how to make methamphetamines. And then Shane, who's now dead, ran into Holly in the carport as she was getting into her vehicle. And she started causing a ruckus. So she had to be taken care of.
Yeah, so
you're just randomly at Clint's house. So how does Clint tie into all this? Does he know them?
yeah. Not only that, but if Shane went there, why did he park so far away? If he was there to see somebody.
Yeah.
Because he had to take Holly away through the woods to a pickup that was beyond the wood line.
Assuming if they already had this interaction set up, saying that, okay, well, my sister usually leaves at this time to go to school, and you guys can come over then. Why didn't they just pull the truck up to the driveway?
Right.
Why didn't they just get it? And they're like, well, she's not supposed to be here. But they're like, oh, Holly's car's still in the carport. I wonder if she's home. Here, we'll stash the truck over here. You hike down this trail system, go up to their house, and see if she's still there. That makes zero sense.
No, none of it makes sense.
And then the family, of course, says that Clint was not involved in methamphetamines or doing anything like that. Then you also have accusations that there are several people that are involved in this case that might be mentally challenged in some ways. And so to me, it says, okay, we get this story from Jason. So that's the one we're going to take. You got Jeff and Mark, who were brought up into the case, but now they're gone.
Right. They're
They
gone.
dropped charges against them. Shane's dead. And they take Jason's story and they're like, Yeah, this is the one we got to run with right here, boys. This is the one that secures our convictions. And not only that, but gave him a sweetheart deal.
That's true. And they also, one of them gets an Alfred plea.
Right. That's Dylan. He takes the Alfred plea.
And for those that have been following along, an Alfred plea is, to me, is just an absurd way to get a conviction. So basically, from my understanding, it's somebody who is convicted and is going to do time for it, but they personally are not admitting any guilt.
Yeah, they're saying, like, I think if this went to trial, you might be able to convict me. So I'll take a deal, but I didn't do it.
Yeah, and the fact that it even has to exist bothers me, and that's just my opinion. I'm sure it's useful in some situations, and hopefully it's wielded properly in the court of law. But to me, it's just, especially in this just sink chowder goop of a case.
Yeah.
I just hate it.
Yeah. And then getting the convictions, you have Zach, who basically is the fall guy. They kind of blame everything on him. You have Dylan, who takes the Alfred plea. You have Jason, who gets the 8 years or whatever, and then gets paroled early, I'm assuming, based off the timeline. And after all this is said and done, we look at the information that we have in the case. And I think that is what makes Mike and I so confused about this case, because we're trying to look at this from a policing aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot, for the life of me, I cannot follow along. Like you said, this is a dumpster fire. And when I'm trying to set up in my mind how this case is unfolding, how the prosecution is going, what the evidence is, all of these things, I have nothing. We have nothing.
Yeah, and the more
we have stories.
Yeah, and speculation, and I'm not afraid of speculation. We do it all the time, but you just keep getting left with more and more questions.
Yep.
And now there are people that are in prison, and one that's not anymore, and you're still like, so what? Hey, real quick, guy in the back here, what happened to Holly?
Yeah,
and they're like, people are in prison for it.
Yeah, people are in prison for it. You had an instance where somebody went over to somebody else's house to teach them how to make methamphetamines. The Holly was still at the residence whenever that happened. After this, it was determined that she needed to be abducted. After she was abducted, she was sexually assaulted, and then she was killed, ? But then after that, people destroyed evidence. They went to take her out to bury her. She was still alive, so we shot her. But we was going to gut her.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I had to go home.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I had to go home. But then they dumped her body over here. But it was found over here. Yeah, okay, well, maybe it wasn't over there. But then after that, we all got arrested. They're like, sounds good.
It does feel like that.
And sounds really good.
Oh, man. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about. So one of the grosser parts of this whole entire case is that not only was Holly Bobo sexually assaulted by these cretins, but it was also filmed.
Yes.
And multiple people talk about the existence of this. And it's even referenced by
Sandra King is the one.
Yeah, I was going to say Sandy King. And she even says, if it was you in that, I would have watched it. And he says, I know.
So you have Jeff and Mark. In referring to that, when Sandra's saying that she's having this conversation with Jeff later comes back and says, well, my ex-wife's name's Holly. And so I thought she was talking about a conversation involving my ex-wife, not this other one. And you're like, wow.
Very convenient.
That's
not just convenient for him, but also convenient for Sandra King, who's trying to use this information that she's giving the police to help her.
Yes.
So knowing the type of people that we're dealing with here, it doesn't surprise me at all if that was a coincidence and she was like, ooh, this sounds shady. I can use this to my advantage. That's how a lot of these people think.
Yep.
Any detail that makes them look good and put somebody else under, that's what they're going with.
Yeah.
And it's very possible.
And you would be surprised how many times in cases like this, like there was one in Amarillo where it actually worked out to the advantage, and maybe we can do it someday, but a guy was found in a grain elevator covered in concrete.
Yeah.
And what you had is multiple people, and this is another case where you've got over half dozen people involved, but you have one single person that's picked up on a very moderate crime as far as all things concerned. And then it just unfolds into this big, huge, long deal. And they ended up finding the body in similar circumstances, but it was all true. You know, the at least the base of it was true.
Right.
But you had the same things happening. You had everybody turn against each other and everybody start looking for deals. And if you expect to get a deal in a situation like that, you better be one of the first ones to come to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why in this scenario you have Dylan in the beginning, then Shane, then Jason. It was a weird combination of how it goes through, how it happens. But if these guys truly are trying to cut deals to get out of nothing with no evidence, how did we get here? How do we get to this point?
Yeah. And I realize we're talking about all this fully knowing that there could be a great deal of information we just don't have.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. Who does like that? Especially in true crime. But here's what we do know. Holly Bobo was well on her way to a good career and a good life. And somebody took that away from her, and we have no idea why.
Yeah.
Seemingly no reason. And that's considering all the different stories we've heard about it. And I also want to say I appreciate everyone's patience trying to keep up with us while our brains are over here just on hyperdrive while we're trying to put this together. And it's confusing. And if it sounds confusing to you, that's because it is confusing to us.
Yeah. And Mike and I have been talking about this case since I did the first episode. And the more, like we said, the more we start talking about it, the more questions we have. And that's one of those things where I almost feel like in a scenario like this, I just got to dust my hands off and get a banger of an episode for next week, because this is so confusing. The way it's easy to tell a story.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to read stuff off of paper or type out a script and tell a story. One of the things that I like about what we do is we try to break everything down and figure out exactly the things that happened, the processes of them, what the legal recourse was, and work it that way. In this case, we didn't have any of that.
No.
And not only that, but we don't even have usable stories that we can piece together to try to get us to where we're going.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone right now. But I don't know. That's
You're going through the scary door.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those cases where you get into it and you're like, wow, what really happened? What exactly happened here? And what is the outcome? And then if you look at it from the viewpoint of, well, the people that were most likely involved,
right,
based off very shoddy stories,
yep,
and zero evidence.
Zero evidence.
Literally, I've heard of zero evidence in this case.
If it does exist, it wasn't turned in.
Yeah, and then we end up at the convictions. We're trying to talk through that, but honestly, when I get there, I'm confused as to how that exactly happened.
This is all happening in real time, people.
I'm confused about how they got the convictions.
Yeah,
and what they used as evidence, what the jury instruction was, how they walked through this. So it was definitely a very hard case to get through and talk about. And I think that's why it's one of those cases I wanted to do, because it definitely draws a lot of attention. And the case has drawn a lot of attention over the years. But man, when you really start to break it apart like we do, it's a dumpster fire.
It is.
The whole thing is a mess.
It absolutely is.
So I don't know if we can give any more commentary as far as that goes, because I feel like if we go any further, we're just going to start talking in circles again. We're going to go back to the drawing board. We'll bring you guys a banger case next weekend. But I think for this episode, in total confusion, we're going to let you go.
Yep. I'm going to go ahead and call it.
Yeah. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. Our numbers are going up, our downloads are going up, and we have you guys to thank for that. If you're looking for us on any of the social media platforms, you can find us on Facebook at The Murder Project. If you need to search for us, you can type in facebook.com/podcasttmp. If you're looking for us on Instagram, we are at The Murder Project. And if you're looking for us on Twitter, we are at The Murder Pod. Also, don't forget, go over to whatever platform you're listening on, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and hit that 5 stars, baby.
Give me the 5 stars.
Hit that thing. We appreciate it so much, and we thank you. If you have a longer form question or comment, you can reach out to us by email. That email address is contact@themurderproject.com. And as always, Mike or myself will respond. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. We look forward to speaking to you in the future. But before we go, please remember,
Head up, eyes up.
and stay alive.